Hello! It's Heather with Prescriptive Living, and this is where our savvy singles come every week to get tips to fail-proof life and love. And this week we're going to talk about something that plagues many single people, but it also plagues many people who are in committed relationships. We're talking about loneliness. And I think it goes without saying, sometimes people who don't have a committed partner in their life at times do feel lonely and they feel like they're maybe missing out on something. We're going to talk about that. But what many probably don't realize is that those who are in committed relationships, about 8 out of 10 people, one person in the relationship often feels isolated and disconnected more often than not. And that's a hard space to be in, because it's one thing to feel alone if you are alone, but if you're not alone and you feel alone, it adds even a more challenging layer of complexity to it. I do want to say that there are things that can be done to build connection, that can build bridges, that can repair for those who maybe are in a committed situation in this dynamic and in their current place. The reason we do content specifically for singles is we like to help singles be able to evaluate where a person's at and how likely they are to show up in some of the areas that are majors for compatibility, and to be able to make proactive decisions about if that's what they're looking for in a companion and a mate before making any serious commitments, because sometimes it's harder to get changes to someone if they're not a willing partner and participant in a relationship to make those shifts. So there are things that can be done, but it is important to recognize, who, and understand who you're in relationship with, what they're about, what they're not about, and how willing they are to cooperate in different realms. Okay, so let's get into this a little bit. One thing that is really important to recognize as a single is that if you're feeling lonely more often than not, you think that being in a relationship is automatically going to shift and change that for you, that is actually not how it works. You really want to be feeling pretty fulfilled and thriving and have a vibrant life on your own, because that is, number one, how you're going to be living your best life, how you're going to be more of an attraction magnet, and how you'll be able to be a good companion for someone who has, some of the attributes and qualities that you're looking for. If you're not really living a dynamic life, somebody who is probably not going to find the way that you are living all that interesting in the long term. So it is an important thing to at least recognize and come to terms with, because when you're living to your potential and capacity and really making the most of your time and moments, then loneliness can come in from time to time, but it's not the norm, it's not the common, and that's a good place to evaluate where you're at in that process. The other thing is, there are certain things that can help people build connection. Okay, so one of them is something that most people don't like, most people don't enjoy, some people completely freak out at it, but it has to do with conflict and confrontation. Okay, if you look at what confront means, it means come face to face, come together. It means we're coming together, and the goal is to build a bridge and to build unity in the area where there are disagreements and misunderstandings that are taking place. Some people are so afraid of this, and I'm going to layer a couple, or talk about a couple of the reasons why. One is just maybe life experiences, fear of conflict in general. Conflict maybe was displayed to them and it was a very scary thing, and it is just a tender area where it makes people very uncomfortable. Important to recognize if that's where your dynamic is. Another one is certain people are just avoid challenges and problems. It could be because of what they were exposed to, could be because of other areas within their life, but they tend to just be avoidant. And the problem with that is they're not coming face to face to confront things, and the issues don't go away and connection gets broken. So again, if this is something you recognize, it's important to become aware of that and then determine what action you're going to take with it. If you want to have unity and connection within a relationship and you stay in that avoidant state, then chances of you being able to have that level of intimacy and connection that you're looking for really becomes very, very difficult. The next one is some people are so pleasing oriented that they just will do whatever they need to make everyone around them comfortable and happy, even though it may not be really how they feel, it may not be what they're really, about at the core of their being, and it's just an act to keep peace and to, put on the pleasing facade of, that everything is okay and everything is right and there's nothing wrong. It's a mask that is sometimes not authentic. And again, that's, it's kind of avoiding reality. And so if that is part of the personality within, it's important to recognize that and determine if that's working for you, if that's getting you the outcomes you want. If you're looking to be part of the uncommon love group and you're looking to be able to have strong connections, these are things that can absolutely hinder and impact that type of outcome for sure. The next thing we're talking about is just having inadequate skills in communication and conflict in general. And because of that, the awareness of what's going on, what to do about it, how to communicate for good resolution, how to handle for good outcomes, those areas, if they're missing, the good news is they can be taught, they can be learned, and they can be cultivated. But it's important to recognize if those things are missing, because if they are, they very much can impact connection as well. Final thing I'm going to touch on tonight is just if people are, not meeting the core needs of their partner. Whenever that happens, a lot of times resentment and bitterness builds up, and it just starts to break down connection, and it can be hard to bridge that if those areas are not addressed. So these are common things that I just talked about. That is why 8 out of 10 people in relationships do experience them. And if you're single, again, I just want to encourage you that if you don't want to have the common couple outcomes, and you recognize yourself in some of these areas that we discussed, you are going to probably need to invest in some training, whether it's mine or anybody else's, but something to get you to the other side of it, because that is how it happens. And conflict is a huge indicator how well people can stay connected, because if you can actually bridge well together in the bad times, then it makes it much easier to bridge together in the good times too. And so it's always a good indicator of where the potential is at. So we touched on a few things here, and just wanted to give you some ideas to resonate, but you can build unity in a relationship, and it's always possible. If one person is willing, it's possible. If 2 people are willing, it's very possible and likely. So that is all. Cheers to living and loving well, and I'll see y'all next week. Ciao.